we look at the question of xenophobia and Afrophobia, how best could the media have dealt with this? And you know, I'm asking this because in the aftermath, I remember the day after that video came to light. For some reason, it took me back to 2008, and I was very concerned about us as South Africans and, you know, this label of being xenophobic and Afrophobic in particular. And it really disturbed me because those pictures that made headlines over the world at the time, I looked at it again, and you have this man who was set alight, and in the background, people literally raising their hands and their fists in triumph. And there's something very disturbing in all of this. And I couldn't help but liken that to, once again, the othering, you know, how it's easy to do something as inhumane once we have othered people.
I couldn't agree with you more, and that's the essence of what our political parties are doing. They are othering and they are scapegoating, and they're doing so for short-term gain. What's even more disturbing is that it's not even done from a premise of being pro-poor, pro-South African. It's being done from a premise of how can we maximize our chances of not losing political power. In other words, the Health MEC of Limpopo actually doesn't give a damn about poor black people. If the ANC did, then services would be excellent, even in parts of the country where we don't have foreign nationals. But that's not the case, which means that actually we have an elite, pro-elite, black-led government that is weaponizing the discontent of poor South Africans to put foreigners on trial and to other foreigners and to scapegoat them, even though secretly our government is both anti-foreigner and also anti-poor black South African. What should we do in the media? Well, I think at least two things. When we report on these stories, we should stop behaving, as my good late friend Karima would have said, as stenographers. Your job is not to say, he said, she said. Open your window and see whether it's raining or whether the sun is shining, and make sure that you are contextualizing a false claim next to the truth. When we report on the rhetoric and the claims that are made by people like the Health MEC of Limpopo, and they are obvious falsehoods, the reportage that we come up with must contextualize those falsehoods, because we have a duty to do so.
Well, it all seems so surreal. Eusebius McKaiser there here on this very platform not so long ago. And unfortunately, today we are talking about Eusebius in the past, because our beloved friend, broadcaster, political analyst and journalist Eusebius McKaiser has died and passed away yesterday at the age of 45 due to a suspected epileptic seizure. And the seasoned broadcaster also wrote for publications such as The Guardian, Sunday Times, Mail and Guardian, Foreign Policy, The New York Times, Business Day, you name it. And to look at McKaiser's legacy now, I'm joined virtually by two of his friends, GM of Sunrise from Mpumalanga, Lance Claasen, and Ebrahim Fakir, who is a political analyst and director of programs at the Auwal Socio-economic Research Institute. Lance and Ebrahim, thank you so much for joining us this morning. You know, I just looked at a message here, and it's from Zandile Dubazana, and she says, the melting pot on Metro FM on Tuesday, Sakina. That's how some of us were introduced to Eusebius McKaiser. Very talented, very well-spoken man. We will miss how openly he expressed his opinions and thoughts. And it took me back. You know, the first time I met Eusebius McKaiser was exactly there at Metro FM. And he was writing for The Star at the time, and saw this name. There was no picture. It was a name, Eusebius McKaiser. And I remember saying to the producer of Metro FM Talk, Amanda Mawela, get Eusebius. He had written something that I wanted to engage him on. And I was in my mind expecting this middle-aged to elderly white man, you know, having read his columns for a while, to pitch up, because she said he's coming to studio. Great. And there comes this guy, you know, a young colored man, and I was just floored. But, you know, that was the start of a great friendship because, I said to him, I was not expecting you. I was expecting someone completely different. But that was the day that I met Eusebius McKaiser, and the rest, as they say, is history. Lance, let me start with you. Eusebius, you, of course, I'm not sure where you met him, but he had all of these friendship circles that sometimes intersected, sometimes they didn't, but, he was loved by all of us. So talk to us about your Eusebius that you remember.
I met Eusebius before he came into radio. He was, I think he had just come back from Oxford. He was writing a column for the Weekender newspaper at the time. And he had contacted Neil Johnson, my program manager at Kaya, where I was at the time. And then we just started, he said he wanted to come into radio. And I advised him, okay, we had a coffee meeting. And I said, dude, this is what you do. You go to the community stations, you build up a platform, you get your confidence right, and then you can go into commercial radio. So he did that. And that lasted all of 1 month. He was picked up by 702. He became their resident political analyst, and then you got picked up by Power, back to 702, and that was these and so for me, I look at it and I go, can I claim that I created Eusebius? Hell no, not even close. He was a superstar. It's like finding Messi. All you have to do is point him in the right direction, and he was always and he was on his way.
And that's who he was. Ebrahim, when I think of Eusebius, you are an integral part of that friendship circle. So last night was rough, but, I don't know how you're feeling today, but yeah, reflect, please.
Well, of course, it's incredibly difficult, and as was the case with Eusebius, of course, you had these friendship circles which were sometimes overlapping, and often you found yourself thinking, am I in it, or am I on the fringes of it, or am I elsewhere? Like a lot of other things he did, he kept you guessing, he kept you on your toes. And like Lance, I met him fairly early on once he'd come back from England, partly through Ebrahim Fakir, partly through a column he was then writing, partly, I think, at the Business Day, and working in the newsroom, sometimes providing analysis and so on. And it was around the time of the Soccer World Cup that we hosted, and I'm sure many of you forgot that. He wasn't avidly, I think, a soccer fan, but somehow he got into the fierce of it all, and from there the sort of friendship blossomed, because there was sort of not just overlapping circles of friendship, but overlapping interests. But the astounding thing for me, Sakina, was, here was a guy who'd come in probably a decade and a half after the transition to democracy, and so this leading a new breed of thinking about how the privations and marginalization wrought by apartheid, but also other forms of discrimination, whether it be class, whether it be origin, whether it be sexual identity, whatever. And for him, those markers of identity were issues that had to be solved as public policy problems, firstly, but secondly, as a problem of consciousness. And cutting through all of his varied interests, whether it be personal grooming and the endless pictures of him in the barbershop, or with his love to do and food, or whether it was his writing and thinking or broadcasting, it was about getting to the heart of the problem of unraveling prejudice, marginalization, and exclusion, and ensuring that everyone could live a relatively meaningful life, which is why the performance of government and the performance of politicians was such an integral part of what he did, along with many of the other things in terms of books and culture, theatre, and even enjoying the good life. Let's not forget about that. He was an incredible socializer,
Absolutely. And, unfortunately, we're just about out of time, and it feels like we've just started. But, I want your fondest memories of, something that you did with Eusebius that you'd like to share with us before we have to go. Lance, you go first.
Lunches were always such a wonderful thing with him. We'd get together, we'd talk, we'd debate. It was like a radio show, bubbling, like with challenging each other, engaging each other, and above all, we loved to gossip. We could lunch with him. So to Nduduzo, his family, our colleagues at Arena, where he was employed to do podcasts and night columns, it's just sending love to everybody out there.
Ebrahim?
Mine is frankly both fond and embarrassing in the sense that we'd enjoyed a dinner, which often was a sort of impromptu preparation and production for his radio show the next day. I made the mistake of sneezing and then blowing my nose at the dinner table. And lo and behold, a friend told me the next morning it was a topic on the radio show. Is it okay to sneeze at the dinner table and blow your nose?
Because everything made it onto the radio show. You know, I must say for me, one of my fondest memories of Eusebius, and Eusebius and I did weird and wonderful things. So I think this was around 2011. And one of the things we used to love was to sing together. And I'll tell you guys one day about the story about the porn site and music. I'll tell you guys about that another time. But Eusebius and he saw Boney M is coming to South Africa. And he says, "Friend, let's go." So me, being the idiot that I am, yeah, friend, it's going to be fabulous. Let's go. I get the tickets, you pick me up. And we went. And there we were at this Boney M concert. And I must say there were very few people of our hue in that concert, but did we sing our hearts out and did we enjoy it? So, you know, those are the sort of things we used to do. Like at the spur of the moment, we would do ridiculous things. But, you know, as the two of you have also echoed, Nduduzo, the family, all the friends, our love and condolences to you. And of course, we will also continue to keep South Africa abreast of what's happening in terms of the funeral and memorial arrangements. And that, Lance, Ebrahim, thank you so much for sharing a moment with us regarding our wonderful friend Eusebius McKaiser and, of course, his life and times. And that's where we're going to leave it for this morning. Eusebius McKaiser's friends, GM of Rise FM Mpumalanga, Lance Claasen and Ebrahim Fakir, also a political analyst and director of programs at the Auwal Socio-economic Research Institute, sharing some thoughts on the legacy of the late Eusebius McKaiser.